So Dhurandhar is a project that overran multiple times.
Yes.
And I indulged every time
Okay, why did you do that?
because there was mad conviction. I was underwriting an absolutely clutter breaking film with cinematic excellence that had never been seen before.
Why did you go with Ranveer Singh?
He transforms into a character. I love that about him. The fact that he is not Ranveer Singh in every film. When he has to become Bajirao, he becomes Bajirao. When he has to become Khilji, he becomes Khilji.
Tell me about a project that you really believed in, but it didn't work out to be the commercial success that you hoped.
Lapata Ladies.
And what was, I guess, a project that, I know we'll talk about Dhurandhar, but aside from Dhurandhar, that you felt this is a punt, but I actually don't know how it's going to do, but I just want to do it anyway.
Basically, we greenlit a film called Baby John, which because I wanted to work with Atlee. I have aborted, films after spending a bunch of money. I have aborted it because I felt the intent has somewhere got diluted. The individual is taking me for a ride. Number
So
of
that has
reasons
happened.
which made me conclude that now it's going to be good money chasing bad money. My failures teach me about people.
Betting on the wrong kind of person?
When you wear a creative hat, you need to think about how clutter breaking are you.
Yeah.
Is your story disruptive? Does it have purpose? What impact is it going to have? Who is the audience you're addressing? The secret sauce is a blended understanding of creativity and commerce. In the world of social media, there's no place to hide. If your film is good, nothing can stop it.
Yeah.
And if your film is not good and not accepted by the audiences, nothing can save it. You don't play to curb downside.
Yes.
Without doing something extraordinary, how is the outcome going to be extraordinary?
Jyoti, thank you so much for joining us and doing Alpha Women with us.
Thank you for having me.
I have to say, you're one of the few women in the entertainment industry, not just in India, but globally. And your track record is enviable, right? In the last 3 years alone, the top highest grossing films have been backed and been under your leadership. You've also been the first and actually one of the only women to lead three media conglomerates in the country, from Eros to Viacom to now Geo Studios. And you've been associated with about 100 film projects. And of course, we all know Dhurandhar, which is on everybody's mind. So this conversation, is a little bit to understand why you did what you did, and I guess to understand what decision making at your level looks like, because we have an audience of a lot of women who are in either leadership roles or looking to become leaders, or looking for a roadmap of what ambition can look like in a woman, and that's why your story is just so fascinating to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to start a little bit at the beginning. You've spoken about childhood, where there was a prolonged illness, which you were having to deal with as a growing up. What what does that do to you as an individual when you're suppose in your early years you're supposed to be living a certain way, child was supposed to be free, but you were actually being faced with something which is so trying.
I think the one line of that is when you have a appa like I had, a father like mine, it shapes character. It builds character. I won't say I had a prolonged illness. When I was 6 months old, I was administered a polio vaccine,
Yeah.
like all small children
Yeah.
are administered at the age of 6 months. And I was one of those freak incidents where the anti-polio vaccine actually gave me polio.
My
So
God.
my left limb got afflicted with polio. But my father, he was a great man. I miss him every day. He taught me to focus on what I can do. I was brought up with a lot of books and a lot of intellectual awakening, from Bhagavad Gita to Vivekananda to comic books to, Plato.
Oh, wow.
So we would discuss everything under the sun. He would say, focus on what you're able to do and do it really, really well, rather than focusing on, now I have got polio and I cannot ride a bike or I cannot run as fast as my friends. If you can excel in chess, do it. So I was the school chess champion.
Wow.
I was, went on to become head girl of my school. So grew up with a lot of confidence, thanks to my father, who never made me feel that I was handicapped or I was, there was something wrong with me.
When you're faced with adversity, there is crisis and there is a gift. What was the gift for you?
What was the gift for me was the ability to not, I mean, to grow up not seeking external validation. Uh, to grow up thinking everything is within you and you have to bring out that, I every time I faced a crisis, I think it has brought out the best in me. And I've seen that that's not a one off, it's every time. So I don't get easily faced with adversity. I'm extremely calm, and I actually am very outcome oriented. And so, you know, I get washed over with sort of a radical clarity in terms of what needs to be done, and with almost single mindedness, I go after it and get it done. And I think that's something that my adversity has taught me, that just because you don't have something doesn't mean that all is lost, and you can't, if you're served lemons, you can make the best ever lemonade.
Lemonade, yeah.
So I've
Yeah.
lived that life,
Yeah.
instead of just, theoretically talking about it.
Yeah. When did you realize you were different from others? Like, when did you realize that perhaps you were more ambitious, more goal oriented? You had a lot more focus.
I don't know whether I realized, whether ambitious is the word for it. Um, I realized that, I wanted to, I won't say different from others. Um, I had a normal childhood, played cricket in the gully, gully cricket, and doing masti, and did all the things that a child should do, read books, watched movies, played on the street. Um, uh, just I, used to give tuitions because we didn't have a
Right.
lot of money, for further education. My brother had finished his studies and MBA, started working. He chipped in as well to get me going for further studies, etc. So I think I come from a Tambram family, Tamil Brahmins, whose only route is education. So I don't know whether to call it ambition, but it was like padhai karna hai. One has to study, become a postgraduate before you can think of anything.
You know, that is where I find your story is very interesting, is that, you know, you did an MBA, you came to the media industry, and eventually the entertainment industry also happened to you. But I'm an MBA as well. And I know that there is a certain kind of analytical framework, certain kind of structured thinking, certain kind of quantitative bent of mind that one has, and one is inculcated by the education. But then Bollywood happens, which in the 90s and the 2000s is built on networks. There's closed access. There's a lot of handshake deals, I presume. What did you do differently that made you so successful?
I think the secret sauce is a is a blended understanding of creativity and commerce. So I think generally you find people at two ends of the spectrum.
Yes, that's true. It's very hard to get
And
both.
I think I find myself in the fortunate middle where I'm able to pivot to a creative slant if I need to, or pivot to a commercial slant if I need to. Having built businesses, that what does a CEO need to do? A CEO needs to think about capital allocation, profitability, vision, what outcomes you need to drive. You need to think about also thought leadership for the industry. When you wear a creative hat, you need to think about how clutter breaking are you. Is your story disruptive? Does it have purpose? What impact is it going to have? Who is the audience you're addressing? So to be able to straddle both, I think held me in good stead, and I could press the pedal on whatever was required at each point in time without having a one size fits all approach. So you went through that evolution of our industry where probably in early days when we used to put money on a film, we would watch the film when it was delivered to us along with the audiences. Have no idea what we are going to get back for our money. From that, we are now involved from the moment an idea takes germinates, from the time it's a log line
To end.
to it hitting the screens. We are involved in all of it. So I think we've come a long way, and our business has come a long way, and it's those chipping away over the last 30 years to sort
That
of
made you successful.
yeah, and made a lot of mistakes. What has taught me more are some of the things that you get wrong, and what can be the things that fall between the cracks between intent and execution.
You've talked a lot about getting things right. But you started as a media executive, but now you've become one of the most consequential decision makers in the industry. Were you ever underestimated?
No, I think it would be fair to sort of say that, I was underestimated because I am here, aren't I? And you can't get here without enablers. So I would like to, first of all, be grateful to all the enablers who, in my journey, because of whom, I've been able to hold positions of consequence and move outcomes, not just be a stooge who's sitting in a chair and not able to take any decision and not move any outcomes. So I would say I've been fortunate, even in my current role, what I've been able to do in 8 short years is only thanks to the family and the entrepreneurial wings that they've been able to give me and the trust they've been able to place to drive this business. So I would say that sometimes the underestimation comes not from the people who are putting money behind you or backing you. I think they are betting on a horse. In this case, the horse they are betting is me. But sometimes it comes from the peers, within the industry, maybe from partners, maybe. But I've had a fantastic 3 decades of working with some of the greatest minds that this industry has seen. So there's always a mixed bag, as in any industry, because in that sense, an outsider.
Yeah, and
You
an
know,
ultimate outsider. But also, you I've heard you say this, is that you need to get it right. A man needs to get it right once, but you need to get it right every time. Like now that you have a Dhurandhar 1 and a Dhurandhar 2, probably a male, a man in your position would say, hey, by the way, I'm going to rest on the laurels of this. But now there's probably expectation of you doing a Dhurandhar 3 and perhaps a repeat of another blockbuster right after that. Isn't that something that you face?
Yes, I think because there are such few women,
Yes.
in our business, especially on the business side of things,
Yeah.
or you can say women producers. The pressure is high. The pressure is high, but I like it. I thrive under pressure, and I like competing with myself.
Did you ever feel like this is unfair? Like I'm held to an unfair standard?
No, I think I adequately put enough pressure on myself. It's challenging to push oneself. I'm extremely, in that sense, not distracted at all. I don't seek external validation. I'm not on social media. Uh, I like the challenges that success, you've often faced challenges that failure brings to you. And you think, okay, how do you course correct? How do you get back on the path? But I think it's it's amazing to face the challenges that success brings you. So if there's a little bit of more pressure to now, okay, you've got it right 3 years in a row, now where next? I think those are great questions to ask, because those kind of pressures will push you to do something more disruptive and more unimaginable. And I hope that happens. So I'm taking that pressure positively for now.
Yeah. You know, they do say that if you want extraordinary outcomes, you shouldn't be afraid of ordinary problems.
Correct. One of our films had that dialogue, कुछ ऐसा करने के लिए जो कभी नहीं किया, बिल्कुल वही करना पड़ता है जो कभी नहीं किया.
Yeah.
Without doing something extraordinary, how is the outcome going to be extraordinary?
Yeah. No, and now with leading Geo Studios, from the outside, it looks like you have this enormous backing, there's unlimited capital, there's massive risk appetite, but there's obviously that pressure of working with Mr. Ambani and the family. What does that look like in an inner world view?
No, well, it is not unlimited capital, unlimited.
From the outside, the
It
external
looks
world,
like
it looks like that.
we, I run a business within Reliance. I have a pot of money, a working capital, a business plan that I'm held to. And so there is performance pressure. In fact, the smaller the businesses, if you're going to lose money for the company, if you're going to, then it becomes nuisance rather than any value that it's adding. So we've been profitable from inception. So I've ensured that whether our business creates the desired impact or not in terms of scale, etc., we should not be a drain on the larger company. We should be self sufficient in our own way. Our industry itself is too small compared to the pond that Reliance plays in. However, we have to be the largest in our industry,
Which you now are.
which
You're
we
the
now are,
number one
and make
content
the
production
largest
house.
impact in our industry, which we now did.
What was the hardest question that, let's say, Mr. Ambani or the family threw at you?
Does this business make money? Because
Yeah.
all around, people were losing money. And, that's all that you would hear from, this industry is all about noise and perception. So everywhere you would hear that industry is suffering, industry is down, and, no one's making any money. So how is it that you're going to be an outlier?
Yeah.
I can see why that's a tough one to explain and convince.
What did you respond to that?
I responded that, I will show the results. I want to deliver rather than talk about it.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the method to the madness, right? I'm a venture capital investor. So, and we're very early stage. We're often first check in. And the investment is largely on the person, the founder, and the vision. Now, if I was to draw that analogy to what you're doing, it sounds to me it's quite similar. There's a director and there's an idea. The shape of it is still a little bit unknown, and you don't know actually how the audience will perceive it, but you decide, I'm going to go ahead or not go ahead. In now all these years, I guess, what have you learned from backing exceptional people?
I think our business is extremely similar to what investment banking is, and early VC funding or angel funding. It's exactly like that. So you, like I said, you read people,
Yes.
you read their intent, you understand their idea, you evaluate the idea. So what are you evaluating? You are evaluating the business idea as well as you're evaluating the person
Yes.
and their ability to execute that business idea. Next, you will evaluate what is the team they have.
Yes. Right. Absolutely.
Apart from the individual, what else is there? And then, if all of that stacks up, you will evaluate whether it's going to make any money.
Yeah. A very similar framework. Yeah.
This is
exactly
exactly what we do.
Yeah.
So, first of all, if you feel that the idea itself is not impressive, even if the individual is impressive, you say
it's
no.
a pass, yeah.
Because it's not clutter breaking, it's not impressive, it's run of the mill, it doesn't have any purpose, and the world was not going to miss this story. So, if that is your first impression, then anyway, you'll tell the individual that hit me with something else. Now, if the idea is good and then you look at the individual and say, what is the past track record? Even if there is not much of a past track record, is there intent? Is there thorough research? Is there conviction? Is there depth? And is there clarity in terms of how they want to execute it? And if all of these things come through when during your interaction, and as you try to peel away some of the layers through your discussion, then you say, okay, now although it hasn't been done before, this person is passionate enough and clear enough, has a clear idea in terms of how they want to get to the execution. But if they lack experience, then you have to pad them up with a better org in terms of better technicians and other crew around them, if they already don't know who they want to work with, and so on and so forth. So it's that sometimes you hold a person's hand long enough to develop an idea, and then when you budget it, it's not viable, or you believe it's not viable, or you believe that there isn't that much upside,
that you originally thought of.
that you don't play to curb downside.
Yes.
You don't play to say, okay, I'm not going to lose more than 10%.
Yeah.
You play to make upside.
Yes.
So if you believe that for whatever reason, now in its current shape or form, it shouldn't go ahead, even at that stage you can abort.
Yeah.
So I think I would consider myself a person who reads people well.
Yeah. It's actually very similar to our assessment process. And, in our world, we call it founder market fit or product market fit. In your world, what is it about the director, the script, and the timing that makes success inevitable, in your view?
I think all three. The director's vision, like I said in my while answering the previous question as well. What's the mood of the country? What's the mood of the audience? What is the subject matter? How does that fit in with what's happening in the world right now?
But let's take an example. Say you greenlit Stree 2. What was the mood of the country at that point of time?
See, Stree 2 was a franchise. Stree 1 was our first film, incidentally. It was Geo Studios' very first film in 2018. Again, we disrupted. It was a small film, small budget. I had loved the film, and typically that genre and with not major star cast would have got a very modest release.
Yeah.
But we went all out and we released it like a big A-list film in 1,000 plus cinemas, and it created history. It became a sleeper hit. So it took us 6 years to make Stree 2. In the middle, we made a whole bunch of other films, and Stree 2 we did after 6 years. So it was already a franchise. So we picked a big release date. We clashed with three other films, took a holiday weekend, and released it like a big blockbuster. And it went on to, it was a horror comedy. It had purpose, it had great music, great performances. And we felt that this is going to appeal to the youth as well as family audiences, because it's a fun, clean, fun entertainment. And it went on to become the highest grossing films, beating much more expensive films or films with more A-list star cast, as they would call. And that is deeply satisfying.
Yeah. And was there a decision making framework when you greenlight films? Is there a decision making framework that okay, this is the archetype of a director, this is an archetype of a film, this is the archetype of a consumer that is going to consume this film? Is that something that you do?
No, we try to not fit a square peg in a round hole. I think that's a universal guideline, that whether if you fit a square peg in a round hole, it's not going to be a good outcome. However, I think I personally don't follow any preconceived rules. I try and keep an open mind. It's not like, okay, only I want to do action or only I want to do ये ही चलता है. We tend to go with that kind of a formulaic approach कि ये ही चलता है or this is what works. I try and break that, because otherwise you'll never disrupt.
But maybe that's what you do, right? The fact that you don't do what is expected, maybe that is the formula.
Well, when you put it like that, because otherwise, how will it be? Otherwise,
How
it
does it
looks
stand
like,
out? Yeah.
everything is coming from a mold. One die, and everything is coming from that die, and it's so boring to sometimes when you watch you flick through OTT.
And you see the same templates. Yeah, no, this
Everyone's
is
looking
yeah.
the same. Everyone's
sounds the same. The
sounds
music's the same.
So then, why will I think time, other than money, a person's time is of so much value.
Yeah.
Today, our business is not competing with only our business. Our business is competing for time from several other activities. So I want to make it worth the while of a ticket paying audience. So that litmus test has to pass.
Yeah. That's the same philosophy that one has in investing, is that the alpha lies where it's not obvious, right? You have to take contrarian bets. So the best time to invest in something is when it violates a narrative. So if the narrative is X, you're better off backing the Ys because there is outlier success there. I want to talk a little bit about how you think about building a slate, because that's very similar to how I would think about, let's say, portfolio construction. Right now, one cannot back or have 10 Dhurandhars, right? That the cost, the capital intensity of it is quite high. Do you have again, is it something that one thinks of is to say, okay, these are two safe bets. For every one bold bet, I'm going to have two safe bets. Is that how it looks like in your world?
It's a great question, and I'm especially heartened to answer it to you because you run portfolios. And so initially, we used to think that a capital allocation should be, you have couple of tent poles or heavyweights, then you have some medium budget, steady, slate, and then you have some smaller films, which if any one becomes an outlier, then, and that's how you sort of hedge your portfolio risk. Uh, and that's how the thought process used to be. So, even up until 2, 3 years ago, it was a quantity game. It used to be that you have two, three big ones, then you have even 2024, if you look at the slate, there was a Lapata Lady at one end, there was a Stree 2, which was a mid-sized budget, but went on to do. Singham was the most expensive movie that year. That was a tent pole. Although it did well, it did less than Stree. Then we had an Article 370,
Yeah, that's right.
which punched above. We had a Shaitan, which punched above. We also had a Baby John. So if you see, that was a portfolio year. But since then, we have changed our strategy. And you can't move away from the fact that this is a hit driven business.
Yeah, exactly.
It is never been more hit driven than it is now. When we used to go with the portfolio strategy, it used to be to sort of tell your investor that it's not hit driven.
Yeah.
Look at us. We are managing the risk so beautifully.
Yes.
But your bad apples were taking away the margins from the good apples. So you were playing a zero sum game and ending up with a tepid margin business. Although you were making money, you were in a tepid margin business because your portfolio was your laggards were
Dragging down the
dragging
return.
down
Yeah.
the winners.
Yeah.
So I've concluded that you have to embrace that it's a hit driven business, put yourself out there, go all in, get it right or get it wrong. And in the world of social media, there's no place to hide. If your film is good, nothing can stop it. And if your film is not good and not accepted by the audiences, nothing can save it. So I don't think there is any place to hide. So I'm now not thinking about the portfolio to hedge it. I'm thinking about fewer bets that'll have to hit it out of the park. So now the goal is, okay, now this one is for an Oscar run or a Cannes Film Festival. That is the purpose of this film. This one is box office.
Okay.
This one is... So you think more in terms of purpose of the film, but box office bets are box office bets.
Yeah, and that's very, very similar again to venture capital because you invest in companies so that they become unicorns, right? And you know that there is a certain degree of mortality that is going to exist in your portfolio, that the failures are going to exist. You're probably going to be wrong more than you're going to be right, but when you're right, you're really right.
Absolutely.
And that sounds the very similar
Absolutely.
analogy.
Absolutely.
Tell me about a project that you really believed in, but it didn't work out to be the commercial success that you hoped.
Lapata Ladies was a staggering hit
Yeah.
in terms
loved
of
it.
perception. Won all awards, every award possible it won. Went all the way for its Oscar run. It's number one on Netflix even today. I think Dhurandhar may beat it, but Lapata Ladies is number one, Indian film globally, beating all other films. But on the box office, it did 20-30 crores. It didn't deliver on the box office. It was a hit after it came on Netflix. So that's a classic story of something that I love, I believe in, but people didn't go out and watch it in the theaters.
And what was, I guess, a project that, I know we'll talk about Dhurandhar, but aside from Dhurandhar, that you felt this is a punt, but I actually don't know how it's going to do, but I just want to do it anyway.
Basically, we greenlit a film called Baby John, which, because I wanted to work with Atlee as a maker, he was not directing the film. It was a remake of a very successful film of his. So it did not do as well as we thought it would do. But I still went along because I wanted to work with Atlee.
What has, I guess, the failures taught you, Jyoti, in terms of risk taking?
More often than not, my failures teach me about people.
Betting on the wrong kind of person?
Just how does a partner behave when something goes wrong? Does he hold your hand or does he move on to the next available pot of money. So, is your partner viewing you just as money bags, or do they value the relationship? So, failure means you've lost money in a studio business, because we are the only ones who put out capital. All other people in the value chain, no one else is putting capital. They are only contributing their time and craft. They are being paid for their time and their effort. So failures teach you about people and their character, and they teach you about your judgment in betting on those people. Was your judgment of that character, of their character, right or wrong? So sometimes you make mistakes, but you make them only once. I like to trust until betrayed. That's my
Yeah.
formula.
Has that happened?
Of course.
Can you give an example?
No.
Okay, but tell me when you would decide to not fund a project. You know, it's production costs have been overrun, timelines are delayed. Now, in the venture world, it happens also, right? Like, for example, companies are running out of money, or for example, I know there are companies which are going to head into zombie zone, which is essentially they neither deliver that success, but nor are they essentially running out of cash. So they're kind of running at this pace. What is that framework for you when you say, okay, I'm gonna now, okay, sorry, but the taps are closed?
So Dhurandhar is a project that overran multiple times.
Yes.
And I indulged every time. I reinvented. Somehow one part became two parts, but we found a way
But why did you do that?
because there was mad conviction,
On your part?
and everybody else's.
Who's everybody in this?
Everyone who was involved, Aditya Dhar to begin with, and the Ranveer Singh, the actor who went all in and did nothing for the duration of the film, did nothing else. Every technician who was part of that film, whether it's cinematography, sound design, editor, Shiv, everyone was all in. We all knew we were making something that had so much purpose, so much heart, that had never been seen before, that had never been done before. And it was almost like, if we don't do this, we are not alive. I mean, uh, we have to do this against all odds. So it defied all. I had to keep finding a way to move forward and not stop. And keep finding a way to move forward and not stop. Although that film was this was one of the hardest things that we have made, in our journey to
But
get here.
probably as an industry as well.
Absolutely. So I think I always say a little bit of divine intervention, a little bit of magic also has happened for it to get. I think our intent and our holding each other's hand has been rewarded by some higher power and the audiences around the world. But equally, I have aborted uh, films after spending a bunch of money. Uh, I have aborted it because I felt the intent has somewhere got diluted. The individual is taking me for a ride, or, number of reasons which made me conclude that now it's going to be good money chasing bad money. The moment I get a feeling that now good money is going to chase bad money, I abort.
And so, I want to talk about Dhurandhar, not only because it was this massive, audacious project, but the fact that it got funded in the first place, right? And a lot of things had to happen. A lot of people had to find each other in order for it to happen. Had it not been an Aditya Dhar, had it not been you, had it not been a Ranveer Singh, probably those puzzle pieces, if they'd not fit in, perhaps the Dhurandhar would never have gotten made. When you've talked about this, you said it was, the story was incredible, Aditya was incredible, nobody had seen the story about deep state and spycraft, but still, if we strip that away, fundamentally, what were you underwriting?
I was underwriting an absolutely clutter breaking film with cinematic excellence that had never been seen before. I mean, when we were talking about it, for example, what were we going for?
How long were you talking about it before?
More than 6 months. So, several iterations of the draft and the story, and for more than 6 months, we knew that the film was expensive. So, we wouldn't have been, every penny had to land up on screen. So, we wouldn't be able to cast now. There was no safe things we could do because it was already an expensive film to shoot. Now, if we add it up with expensive actors as well, it's going to render it unviable on day one. So we wanted performers rather than actors or stars, the so called stars.
Why did you go with Ranveer Singh? Because
I
that is
have
a big
worked
star.
with Ranveer, Ram Leela, Bajirao Mastani, when he was not this Ranveer. So I have worked with him when he was starting out. And I still believe those are some of my favorite films of Ranveer Singh. I find him an absolutely outstanding actor who gives it all. He transforms into a character. I love that about him. The fact that he is not Ranveer Singh in every film. When he has to become Bajirao, he becomes Bajirao. When he has to become Khilji, he becomes Khilji. When he has to become Gully Boy, he becomes Gully Boy. So he transforms. He doesn't play Ranveer Singh.
Yeah.
I love that about him, and
Yeah.
I felt that he had not. Both Aditya and me felt that he would be a great
He was the
choice
person.
because Aditya is a performer's. He likes performances rather than stardom. So do I.
Yeah.
So we were both aligned on that. I think Dhurandhar was all about getting the execution right. If we couldn't execute, nobody would get the film only.
Yeah.
Like I remember in one of the sessions, Aditya was saying, we were talking about इसमें इतने सारे कैरेक्टर्स हैं और इतने सारे नाम हैं. Is this wise? Will people remember all this? And then Aditya said, if I get the execution right, people will be Googling them and see
That's
what
actually
he's
true.
done.
That's actually true.
I
Yeah.
remember that conversation we were having in this conference room. He said, if I get the execution right, people will be Googling them. And people did Google
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And so we did help them along a little bit, a super here, a thing there. So the way, so that people can go back and look at the peak detailing that has gone on in making this film. So I think our journey to make Dhurandhar in itself is
It's a case study.
it's a case study and a story in itself.
Yeah. What were some other very deliberate choices you did, apart from, let's say, the choice of the actor and the performers? What were some of the other deliberate choices that you, as somebody who manages money, are making in such an audacious bet?
I think the two-part decision, a lot of that, of course, Aditya met us halfway creatively. And I think by the time the budget had overrun the second time, there was no option but to look at it like that. Also, the footage was beautiful. What was the number of hours of footage that we were getting compared to the pages in the script merited a two-part film. So I think gently agreeing that with Aditya collaboratively, as well as giving him the comfort that, listen, when we look at the final edit, if we both feel that it doesn't land as a two-part film, even though we would have committed the funds, we will still release one good film. So I took that leap of faith with him. Communicating clearly what the expectation was, but giving him that room that we will do what is best for our story. and we will not do anything that is not best for our story.
Yeah.
So that gave him the courage to freely go shoot, do this. Shiv, an absolute genius, gave us an edit that absolutely worked. As so the middle of the script was part one, and the beginning and the end ended up as part two. And that worked so beautifully because of the way Aditya stitched it all together. And so that was one decision. The release date of saying that now we are going to go on this release date, tag the promo of the or the teaser of the second one with a release date, show that conviction to the audience, tag that with the first film, 3 months apart, release two films, knowing that with the windowing on OTT, etc., the first one will land on OTT, it'll break out on OTT, and that'll give us tailwinds to release the second one.
Yeah.
As we're marketing the second one. But it so happened that the first one was still in the cinemas when we released the second
Yeah.
one. We didn't predict that.
Yeah.
So that added even more tailwinds
Yeah.
for us and gave us even more momentum. But we had a method to how we wanted to do it, and we didn't want to be tentative. Although there were other films on that date, I mean, nothing, we were unstoppable
Yeah.
in our minds.
Yeah.
And sort of single-minded in terms of how we wanted to create that impact
Yeah.
with this film.
What did you put a number and said, okay, I think it will gross X, but actually it did, north of 300 mil. So now, what was that number?
I think our number was, for everything that we did, if it did not do a 500, the first one, if it did not do a 500 crores plus number, we felt that then the two-part would have also been a mistake.
Yeah.
The first one should at least do 500 crores for to vindicate all our decisions, was how we thought about it. And if it had done that, anyway, we were coming home safe and profitable.
Yeah, you were in the black,
Yes.
yeah.
But we didn't know what to expect. One thing both Aditya and I knew were that we are going to assume that our audience is intelligent. We want to respect our audiences. We want to, for the very first time, treat them with a lot of respect.
Yeah.
And look how they rewarded us.
Yeah.
So we said, we're not making a cerebral film.
Yes.
But we are not making a dumb film either.
Yeah.
It's intelligent enough for people to
Yes.
know what's going on.
And I think that was actually, there was no unnecessary exposition. There's no unnecessary backstory. In itself, it was very intelligently crafted.
And when I say perfect storm, I remember in initial discussions when we were talking about the sound of this movie, the sound design or music, it was like, yeah, this genre, typically you'll just have background music. You won't have too many lip sync songs, or you won't have, it's not a song and dance wala movie.
Yeah, it's not.
So that was a thought process. And, so we had also, for the first one, our music partner was Saregama. I remember in our contract, it said, yeah, max 4 or 5 songs, no lip sync. Our thought process was that it's not. But look at this genius, Shashwat. When he looked at all of the material and when he and Aditya jammed together, the soundscape of this film transformed, and 14 songs in each of the films. We reverse licensed. Aditya was always saying that we will license English songs. We did that as well. So but the way we brought the scenes to life with the BGM, the sound design,
Yes.
the music, the retro, the originals, it absolutely brought another layer
Yeah.
of stickiness
Yeah.
to the franchise,
Yeah.
and made it absolutely unforgettable. It probably brought female audiences that may not have come naturally to the genre. The action sequences were choreographed almost poetically, like with a Rambaho or a Monica, oh my darling,
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
so it was an evolving process. So, full credit to Aditya for shepherding each of the HODs and for each of uh, for bringing out the best in every department.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I want to ask you, your marketing strategy for the first one was also very different, right? It was almost very guerrilla. There were no big road shows, there was no big noise. It was, this drop, like kind of you just went direct and you just basically told the audiences, hey, this is coming out, go watch it. And that was again something that you did by design.
yes, because in my experience, when we market a film, um, you're buying views from Google or Meta.
Yeah.
Uh, those don't convert to bums on seats. You can say 100 million views are in the first 24 hours or 200, any random thing you can say. They are paid. They don't convert into bums on seats. We already knew that there were lots of lobbies ready to pounce on us and finish us as soon as the film was going to be out. We were deeply aware that many people were waiting for us to fail.
Why was that?
That is always, I mean, that's not something I can answer. It's probably one of the impediments of our business where, you have lots of naysayers within
Yeah.
rather than outside,
Yeah.
and rather than rooting for each other, we bring each other down.
Yeah.
So we knew that this was an audience had to make this film work. There was nobody else, so we had no press shows. It was
Yeah,
not
there was.
about getting 4 stars or 5 stars
Yeah,
or
yeah.
reviews or anything. It had to grow through word of mouth.
Yes. Yes.
So that's how we marketed the film.
Wow. And that was a calculated decision which really paid off. In my world, some founders are brilliant, but they're really impossible to work with. I'm guessing in your world also, some founders, some directors and content creators are brilliant but impossible to work with. How much genius can you tolerate?
I would like to believe that from their lens, they are also tolerating me. So I think it's it's that charm of
Yeah.
working with people who are, that's the fun of the business.
But you still hold more leverage in a way, right? Because you're still the person who's going to give them capital.
See, I don't operate in a manner where I throw my weight around. I have more successful partnerships because I respect the creative contribution. Aditya Dhar may call me madam, but I equally treat him with respect, and I respect his creative acumen. Doesn't matter whether I can prevail over a decision or not. We have a very healthy, he'll be able to easily convince me about something that he wants to do his way, and I would indulge him. He's an example, but there may be other people like that.
What's the one thing about, I guess, in Bollywood that producers don't talk about publicly?
There are many things we don't talk about publicly because somehow it is sometimes we end up being a little bit pretentious, but I think ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. I think we need to celebrate each other's successes more, and not turn into a very insecure community. Things will go wrong as well. That's okay too. So we should support each other when things go wrong, and we should support each other when things go right. Our competition is not within. I like to focus on how to make the Indian pie much larger than 2 billion. How can our films cross over to a world market? How can we make 70% of our revenues from international markets, and our 30% also, rather than 70 30, the reverse of it now. And how can that pie domestically also increase? How can more theaters be launched? How can we bring more transparency in the business? Transparency will, we don't have any rent track or any such third party body that monitors box office. If we can have that, maybe we can attract foreign investment or even local investment. More corporates will be willing to invest in this
Yeah.
business because the revenues will become more transparent.
Yes.
So those are the things that I try and lose my sleep over.
Yeah. No, as a venture investor for, or even in private equity, historically, if one was to see the early first generation private equity investors in media or films, etc., were a disaster. They just never paid off. That ROI never panned out, and there were all sorts of reasons for it. Either the people were not right, there were frauds, there was just a lot of opaqueness. And I think, yeah, it is time that there has to be much more professionalization, and I think you're steering the ship very much to for the industry to go down that path, actually.
Even artificial intelligence, I don't
Yes.
think we meet as a group, discuss the impact of that.
That's
What
a
does
real
it,
shame, though.
you know?
That is a real shame. But I do see that filmmakers in the South, like S.S. Rajamouli, met him. He's very forward thinking, has a ton of foresight, using a lot of actually game engines and a lot of like modern tech on the animation side, on the VFX side, employing that. But actually, those conversations are really missing in Bollywood. Is that something you push towards your filmmakers?
Yes, big fan of the names you just took,
Yeah.
and I think they will create impact
Yes.
globally. Having said that, there are maybe people are doing it in Bollywood as well, in the Hindi film industry as well, but not as a group.
Yes.
Maybe they're doing it individually, which is why it's not visible. But I think there is room to collaborate more.
Yeah. We're in the last segment, Jyoti, before we close. Our podcast is called Alpha Women, Jyoti. I ask every guest this, who's sitting in the chair, what does the word alpha mean to you?
Alpha, as see, alpha, when the word alpha is taken, uh, what it connotes is aggression, power. You know, typically it is always used in that context because it's typically used for animals or male.
Yes.
For me, if it's being used in the context of a woman, I would say empowering, secure, paying it forward, non reactive, outcome orientation, uh, and, defining leadership through leaps in the human side, EQ side, as well as business side.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
Thank you so much. That's a fantastic closing thought. And this was a great conversation. And really, really enjoyed having you here. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. This conversation was all about risk taking and bold bets, about not to seek external validation, and how the pursuit of knowledge and purpose is often goal enough. So, if you're looking for inspiration and wanting to take that leap of faith, this is the playbook for you. I'm Saloni Sehgal. This is Alpha Women. Until next time, in partnership with Spotify and our media partners, Outlook Business.